Welcome to the Own Your Choices, Own Your Life podcast. I know you are here wanting to change and rewrite your story. You are desiring to step into the impact that you know you are here to create. I am here to guide you with the proven tools and strategies used by myself and our speakers to support you in taking radical responsibility in your life and learning how to own your choices to change your story. My name is Marsha Van Weinsberg. I am a storytelling business coach, master NLP trainer, speaker, podcaster, and 7 times published author. My clients have found freedom and purpose from overcoming their shame stories and learning how to share them with the world. I am so grateful you are here. Let's get started. Welcome back to the show. In this episode, we are speaking with Charles and Heidi Hatley. They are the honest, unfiltered voices behind Kava and Kettlebells, a podcast that's redefining strength, sobriety, and intentional living. Charles is a U.S. Air Force veteran and small business consultant. Heidi is a personal trainer, homeschooling mom, and traumatic brain injury survivor. Together, they are raising their kids, lifting heavy weights, and sipping kava in a world saturated with alcohol. After surviving a life-altering car crash, they turned to natural healing, rebuilding their lives through movement, faith, and a botanical alternative called kava. Today, they are advocates for a stronger mind and calmer bodies through sober living and holistic practices. Their story is a testament to the power of choice, choosing sobriety, choosing strength, and choosing to live life with clarity. This is such a beautiful conversation. I learned a lot. I did not know what kava was. And as they were sharing their story, it was so powerful to understand what they have walked through to become who they are today. And when you look up the picture on Instagram, it's remarkable that they're alive. So I love that they are here doing this work in the world. Welcome to the show today. I have 2 guests today, which is so much fun to be able to have this connection. So Charles and Heidi, I would love it if you would start with introducing yourselves so that we can get into the story and really how aligned your message, your mission is with what we talk about in the show.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Ladies
absolutely.
first.
So I'm Heidi Hatley and Charles is my husband. And we have a podcast ourselves. It is called Kava and Kettlebells. And it is a podcast where we talk about really just life, but specifically how to live a very intentional, health-oriented, fitness-oriented lifestyle. And for us, that means prioritizing more plants and botanicals as opposed to alcohol. And I'm a personal trainer. And so we also talk a lot about, fitness and, why that is so important in people's lifestyles. And we are also both brain injury survivors. And that was a really huge reason why we pivoted away from alcohol and decided to turn, to plants instead. And so our goal is just to help, get the message out to people. There's a lot of misinformation out there about plants. So we like to clear that up. And we also like to, provide a platform for small businesses to really just help spread the word and help people the best we can. And we are also parents. We have 2 little girls and we are homeschooling them. We are on our 2nd year of homeschooling, which has been amazing. We were nervous at first, but it really has been a blessing. And I will hand it over to Charles and he can tell a little bit more about himself.
Yeah. Got my background fitness-wise because we are Kava and Kettlebells. I grew up really not, I wouldn't say into the weight room or anything like that. I grew up as a competitive boxer. And then kind of in my college years, I really got into strength training. And from there, that's kind of been my focus. So all things, weightlifting, getting stronger, physique-wise, all that kind of stuff. And then was a 11-year Air Force veteran. And a lot of why I push things outside of alcohol is because the military has a very, very heavy drinking culture, alcohol culture, along with, especially in the veteran community, pushing prescription pills. So when I was in the service, I was always looking for, hey, what alternatives are there? If I don't want to drink alcohol, what can I use to relax, to be sociable, just like someone would use with alcohol? And I found Kava, and Kava, Kava. Everyone thinks it's like
The food kava.
there's a
Yes.
restaurant. It's a root from the South Pacific Islands that is traditionally drunk, sort of as an alcohol replacement, but it actually has a lot of health benefits, no side effects like alcohol does. And once I found that, never went back to drinking. So personally, myself, I'm going on about 9 years without a drop of alcohol. And like Heidi mentioned, we're both TBI survivors. We can get into that later, but mine personally was actually back to back within the span of about 18 months. And with all the research coming out with what alcohol does to the brain, just made sense to stop, especially when you find these other alternatives out there. So again, our whole podcast is talking about how to live a healthy lifestyle, how to give yourself the best habits, then also how to kind of live a sober lifestyle away from alcohol and also hard drugs too, because a lot of people from the addiction community, whatever hard drug that might be, end up coming over to botanicals because they can use that as a way to relax, socialize, and just better their health.
Amazing. Honestly, I did not know much about Kava. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know much. I do know, I would say in the last probably couple of years, I've interviewed a number of people. Like I see so much more conversation around like sober curious, sober living, whichever way you want to look. I know also is I speak from a female. We hear a lot with perimenopausal and menopausal women. I hit a point probably 2 years ago and I didn't even drink hardly ever, but I like one drink felt like a bottle. And I think my body was just saying stop. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I did. It was literally, it'll be 2 years in December. And I don't miss it. Every time I even think about it, I'm like, my body just says, nope, we're not doing that.
Yeah, it's crazy you say that because, I'm a personal trainer and I have a lot of clients, and you're not the only woman to say that. And there are, our hormones, unfortunately for women, it's not quite the same for men. Our hormones change all the time, and we do go through very specific stages in our hormones. And it's like the switch turns for our bodies, and our body is saying, this is a poison. We
Yeah.
don't want it. So congratulations. That's amazing to hear. You've been able to go 2 years. And it's great to hear, like you said, your body doesn't miss it.
It doesn't miss it. It's actually interesting. We've done a lot of social things where, I remember saying somebody saying to me, how long are you doing this for? I'm like, I don't know. Every time I ask myself, do I want it? The answer is no. It's actually very clear and no. But I also know that there's a lot of pressure when it comes to alcohol, especially in social settings. So can you explain a little bit more about kava just so people can understand what it is and how it works?
Yeah, I guess I can take that
Yeah,
one.
I'll let Charles explain, and then I'll get into kind of the community behind it as well.
Okay.
For sure. So kava comes typically from the South Pacific. So we're looking at islands like Vanuatu, Tonga, Fiji, Hawaii does grow their own kava as well. And every kava, you can, I guess, compare it to cannabis and wine.
Okay.
In fact, where like wine, you have different regions where it's grown and it will taste different, have different effects to some extent. Kind of same with kava. So depending on where it's grown, it's going to have a different taste, texture to it, and feeling. And this is where I kind of compare it to cannabis because it makes sense for a lot of people. With cannabis, you have strains that will lean either heavy, so will make you sleepy, or heady, which is going to be a little bit more energizing, kind of more for like socializing, where you have like a balance.
Mhm.
Kava does the same thing. So you're going to have some cultivars. With kava, you call them cultivars, the different ones out there. Some are really good for nighttime because they'll make you very, very relaxed and your body very relaxed. And some are a little bit more sociable, uplifting, and some are kind of balanced in between. So that's a nice thing because if you're going out and you're socializing, you can have some kava beforehand. That's not going to put you on the couch. But, a great thing about kava is it's excellent for sleep. muscle recovery, and just relaxation. So you can have a heavy kava in the evening to kind of help you unwind, relax. But the science behind it is it hits your GABA receptors just like alcohol does.
Mm.
So it gives you that feeling of relaxation, inhibition, and just makes you feel good. But the wonderful thing about kava is there's really little to no side effects. And the fact kava right now is being studied for a multitude of benefits, including PTSD and, for anxiety. And again, I'm not a medical professional, so
Yep.
these claims, and also there are some constitutes of kava that potentially have anti-cancer properties and no hangover. So for a lot of people, they, after a hard day of work, they want to go grab, that glass of wine or a couple beers. But, we know now that alcohol is directly linked to 7 different types of cancer. We know that one drink has a significant impact on your sleep. So when people say, oh, it's just one beer or one glass of wine, well, it actually has quite a bit of a compound effect. And if you take that out of your life, benefits, right?
Mhm.
But people still want something to relax. And for a lot of people too, like for me, when I was in the military, obviously can't use drugs, can't smoke cannabis. So that was out of the question. So when I found kava, it was like the perfect thing. And I'll kind of let Heidi get into the community aspect behind it.
Yeah, so going back to the heavy and heady, if you are aware of cannabis, you have like indica sativa, and that's kind of heavy is more like indica. And I always say like my eyelids are getting heavy, better for sleep. And then the sativa, more uplifting, euphoric one is more of the heady one. And so, yeah, it was huge for Charles to find kava when he was in the military. For any listeners who are in the military, you know that it is a very alcohol centric organization. Every event that they're at, there's alcohol. Charles was an aviator and everything was surrounded by alcohol. Your first flight, you got your instructor alcohol. Your finny flight, your last flight, they douse you in champagne and you buy them alcohol. You passed a ride, get some alcohol. They had bars in their, it's called a heritage room in their squadron. It's just very alcohol forward. And it was hard for Charles because he didn't drink and sometimes it felt awkward. He still wanted to socialize. So being able to get kava was fantastic. And it really allows you to have that social lubrication and to, have that community. And what's really becoming extremely popular is kava bars, which are in the United States. I'm not sure if
No,
Canada
I have not
has
heard
them.
of this.
I don't think so.
I don't think they do. Yeah. On the horizon. I'm sure you guys will get some soon. But in the States, they are huge and they're really becoming very popular, especially with Gen Z. Gen Z is really pushing back on alcohol for many reasons. I think it's great to see. And so kava bars offer a place for people to go. And there's so many other people, all different kinds of people for you to communicate and interact with. And what's really cool about kava, and people don't quite understand until they drink it, and then they're like, I get it, I get what you're saying, is it makes you talkative. So there are a lot of people who have, social anxiety, who just feel very anxious being around new people. And we interviewed someone who told us that the person she was on the inside, she never felt like she could let that person out. She always just felt like that person was trapped inside of her. And when she was able to drink kava, she felt like that person could finally come out. She could finally interact with people how she wanted to. And it
Mhm.
was just life changing for her. And so when you drink that kava, you're just having great conversations, you're listening, you're talking. And, when you're drunk and you go to a bar and you drink alcohol, bad things happen and you don't always remember what happened. But when you drink kava, you remember everything. So you make these great connections, you have these great memories. You're able to open up and you're just a peaceful person. And it's really, life changing for a lot of people. And what's interesting about kava is the native way that it was used in the past is the tribes would drink it. It's called a kava circle. So if they had disagreements, instead of battling, they would come together, the different tribes, and they would have a kava circle. They would all drink their kava and they would talk. That would open them up. They would work out their problems and they would go about their days. And so that is so huge to me. what a crazy world this would be if all of our governments did that instead
Oh,
of
and the podcast goes this way. It goes that way. I like sense of humor. Trust me. I agree. I think that if we could find ways, yes, I 100% agree. Okay, so we've got the kava. You have kettlebells is a big part of what you do. Very obviously health focused family. And then we have your history and what you have both experienced. As I was looking up, not to do a shock thing, but when I was looking up your history and your story, I gasped at the car. I really did. I was like, wow. Okay, so can you share this part of your story? And I'm sure this isn't easy, but I think this is actually really an important piece of your whole story.
Yeah. So that car was definitely wrecked for sure. We had just moved back to Arizona from where we're from. I got stationed back there. I was active duty. And we both went to Arizona State University. It's where we started dating. And I did ROTC, which is Reserve Officer Training Corps. And it's a way to go to school and then also do the program. That way, when you graduate, you can commission as an officer and go into the Air Force. And when I came back to Arizona, because we just moved from Nebraska, we had only been there for like maybe 3 months.
Yeah, it was very short while. We've been there a few months.
Yeah. So just getting settled in. And then my detachment heard that I was back in town. They asked if I wanted to come up for a career day to speak to the cadets. So I was like, yeah, awesome. And we lived about 2 hours away from Phoenix. We lived in southern Arizona at the time. And went up for the day, brought our girls up because we have family in Phoenix. So we dropped them off at family, went and spoke to the cadets. Heidi came with me. And then that's the last thing that I remember, both of us, because on the way home, we, while in a sedan, a Chrysler 300, and, you know, looking back, like hindsight's 2020, ended up being no fault to either party. But, when this accident happened, there were police that were already out there for another event. So it's all on the dash cam. But they went ahead and they called 4 people dead in because when they saw the accident happen, they were like, there's no way people survived this. Came upon the car. Car was absolutely destroyed. The roof was ripped off. Based on the forensics, both of our girls were in the back seat. They were both about an inch from being decapitated.
They were in the car with you. That was going to be one of my questions to you. So was it 2 cars that hit each other? So,
No, so it was us in a semi truck.
oh,
What we were told is that we essentially tried to merge into the lane at the same time. And so our car started going under the semi. So the top was ripped off. If you're on our Instagram, you can see the car, the image of the car that you're talking about. And so I was the passenger. And if you look in the seat behind me, you can see my daughter's car seat. And so I think that was kind of the shocker every time I look at that photo is to see that our girls were in there. And we are, very faith-based. And to me, you cannot tell me that God was not protecting us. And there's no reason that me or my daughter should have survived. And it's just a testament, I think, to God's grace on us in that sense. But yeah, they thought that the 4 of us, because again, there was an incident. So the cops saw the whole thing happen, which also is a blessing. They were able to get to us right away.
amazing.
But they thought that we were all dead. And then they heard the girls crying. Charles was talking. And they got Charles and the girls out. They could not get a pulse on me, though. So whether I was actually dead, I don't know. But they thought I was for sure. So they wanted to get the girls and Charles away. This is what we're told. And I think you remember a little bit about that part.
Yeah, I remember just a tiny piece of talking to the highway trooper, but all in all, they ended up airevacing Heidi up to the hospital back in Phoenix. And then they took myself and my girls via ambulance back up there. Heidi had 3 massive brain bleeds that were pretty bad.
Charles looked the worst.
Yeah.
So he had slammed his face on the steering wheel. So he looked the worst, but I didn't remember anything. So I claimed to have remembered like my parents and my family. Ironically, the hospital they took me to was hospital that my sister was a nurse at. But I did not remember Charles. I did not remember our girls. And I think that was really hard for
That would be
Charles.
hard. That
Yeah, it
so
was.
what was the recovery time like? Like, first off, I couldn't believe that your daughters were in the car. Like I said, I saw the picture of it, and I know that that's also a testament to why health and taking care of yourself is so important and a part of your story. So I'm glad that you're all okay. But I also want to be able to share here what TBI is like and what that recovery is like. Because again, until we have these conversations, people don't realize what that experience is like.
Yeah. So once we got back to the hospital, it was tough because the doctors were telling me that based upon her injuries, and again, you have to have, looking back, they have to tell you kind of like, not worst case scenario,
Yep.
but the brain's just so interesting and the
It
recovery
is.
for everyone's so different. But they were essentially telling me that, there's a good chance that she was going to be like this for an indefinite period of time. So that kind of first week, I was kind of coming to grasp of, all right, what does being a single dad look like while taking care of my spouse who doesn't remember who I am and can't perform tasks and everything. But regardless, right, like push forward and we got her moved back down to Tucson where we were living, which is about 2 hours away from the hospital. And she started therapy. And just every day I would go and sit with her and, I would bring her pictures and stuff and try to get to jog her memory and talk to the doctors every day and say, what's the prognosis? What's the prognosis? And, same response all the time. And it was difficult, because want answers, but again, the brain, it's just so dependent on the individual and all the history that they have and previous, cases. They can, use that as the benchmark. The best they could tell me was she might get better in the future. And I guess to kind of tie that piece up, she was in recovery for about 4 weeks, different therapies. And then one day she was back and the doctors literally said, we've never seen, it's a miracle, right? It's a miracle to go from 3 massive brain bleeds and
Mm.
not very good prognosis to her walking out of the hospital and going to the gym that day,
Right.
you know?
4 weeks later.
Yeah, it was almost 4
So,
weeks later, and, the doctors even said that a huge reason why they think that I was able to recover so quickly was because I was fit, and I wasn't as deep into my fitness journey, obviously, as I am now. I was studying to become a personal trainer at the time, and I had been in my journey for, I would say, about a year and a half, 2 years or so. I had been introduced to strength training about a little over 2 years prior, and I had been consistent for a good, year or so. And building that muscle, because your brain is a muscle. So when you work out, it's working your brain, and just my body's ability and Charles' body's ability to survive the accident. A huge reason is because we were fit. And so that's another reason why we just try and preach so much the importance of that healthy lifestyle. And so took about 4 weeks in the rehab center, but then when you're discharged, obviously it's not just like a snap your fingers
No.
recovery. I wasn't able to drive. I couldn't look at screens. It was hard to read. I had to sleep a lot. I would get very, agitated with noises, and I would still push myself to go to the gym. I obviously couldn't push as hard. And it wasn't even my body, it was my brain, like listening to the noises and all the people was hard, but it was so important to me, and I understood the importance of that on my body and my mind that, I really pushed through that. And I think that was a huge attributing factor to my quick, full recovery. And I would say by December, January, so the accident was in August. I was discharged in September. And then come December, January is when I finally felt like I was back again. And then I went and I got my personal training certification in March, which was huge for me. So yeah.
Wow. Honestly, when I hear that and I think of how fast in the big grand scheme of things your recovery was, it is something. I've had a number of guests lately, very different, diverse health experts talking in the sense of understanding that, we talk about meditation and we talk about, hypnosis and things that I do that really do support brain function. But he said, what I did hear even just recently was that you can actually help your brain to heal. Like if you really can do some of these techniques, but maybe just taking it as a priority, like your health, your brain is an organ. And so I just thought that was fascinating. The other thing that I have seen a number of times in this discussion, like it's one thing to break an arm, you can see a cast, you know that it's there. You can't see a TBI. You can't see this. So what is that like navigating? And I'm just curious, is that something that you are still aware of? Does it ever show up in any way, shape, or form just to really be able to educate people?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It was frustrating for me because, again, like you said, you can't see it. Everyone thought that I was fine. I was functioning fine. The biggest symptoms that I saw was my lack of vocabulary. And in my mind, I wanted to say something, let's say the word good, that sounds good. In my mind, I was like, there's a different word I want to say. Like, I don't want to just say that word, but I couldn't come up with it. And so someone might say that was just because, I'm a mom of two young girls and I'm not able to read as much, that may be part of it too. But it was a little bit bigger than that. That was the hardest thing I would say for a year or two is just finding my words, being able to articulate things the way that I knew I could. Other than that, for me, I did not have a lot of major side effects. But again, I also attribute it to I was sleeping a lot. So in the beginning, I took naps all the time. I was sleeping. I intentionally would not go on the phone, would not go on the computer, was not looking at screens. We were big in supplements. Charles had to force feed me lion's mane mushroom capsules as
Yep.
well as fish oil. And I think that was a huge, factor as well, just really prioritizing, our body from the inside out.
Yeah. And for me, my TBI wasn't as bad as Heidi's in that car accident. But about 15 months later, when I was in a combat zone, I sustained another TBI due to a improvised explosive device, and that compounded on it. And so for me, what I received after that were kind of ongoing migraines. It actually ended up disqualifying me from flying. So I got DQ'd from flying because of that, because of the medication I had took. But honestly, I think it all worked out well. And even with my migraines now, I can manage them and treat them without pharmaceuticals with some botanicals, things like kratom, which is known for its pain relieving properties. And again, just like mindfulness, right? So, but they do come around here and there. And, I've had plenty of CT scans and nothing shows up. But, talking with neurologists, they're like, yeah, after a couple TBIs, like that's definitely going to be a residual effect. But I have noticed that they've started to get less frequent. So I think it's a good, foreshadow what's to come as well.
That's great to hear. I mean, especially with both of you experiencing that, different, but still experiencing it. Does that come into play? Like, are there times where you're like, okay, I need more help right now? Or do you find that because of that, you support each other in a really beautiful way, which is what I'm sensing and feeling?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's for us. I do think, I'm not trying to say like, oh my gosh, we're so perfect, but
Oh,
we
no.
do have, we do just have a really good relationship. And so I do think that we are able to just kind of support one another and kind of even, I don't even feel like I need to let you know if like I'm maybe struggling a little bit. I think we just kind of sense that in the other one and are able to kind of step in and support as needed. We're just very intentional about listening to our body and listening to how we're feeling, both mentally and physically. And so I think for us, it isn't a challenge. We're just very in tune with our body and in tune with how we're feeling and addressing it, not ignoring it. And so I think that's huge for people to learn to listen to their body, learn to understand what their body is telling them, and to respond accordingly, not try and just ignore it and push it away, but acknowledge it and do something about it. And the sooner you can do that and get in that habit, it doesn't seem like an issue. It just seems like, well, that was just life, that day. And I worked through it and now I'm moving on.
Yeah. And I think that's a really key piece, is just like listening to your body. And I think right now, I'm not saying everyone, but in general, like a lot of people are distracted, right? Yeah, we got work, we got stuff going on, we got screens nonstop, right? So sometimes, now I don't know, sometimes you talk to someone who's like, what was the last time you just sat there for 5 minutes with nothing, no stimulus?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, I don't know, because any chance I get to fill the time, I'll pull up, Instagram or whatever. And I think that kind of goes into a piece of like, hey, like sometimes you got to take a step back and kind of listen to your body. How are you feeling? Like, after you ate that meal, or how are you feeling after you go back to alcohol, drink all night, and the next morning, how are you doing? And I tell people this all the time, like, you don't need to be some like biohacker or fitness expert to listen to your body. You just have to have a body,
Mm.
honestly, and just listen to it.
It's such a great point. I feel like, I don't know how to say this, except that when you value health, you make time for it. And when you have a partner who values it, you support each other in that process. And that is something like with my husband and I, for example, like I've had people say to me all the time, because he trains, he competes at different levels. And they were like, well, like, doesn't that bother you that he's out training at night? I'm like, or what? He sits on the couch for 3 hours, and we make time for it. And it's a priority. It's just kind of how we see it. But I also know that many times that's viewed as very weird and foreign. And it's almost normal to watch 4 hours of TV every night as opposed to take care of your health. I don't know where I'm going with the question with that, but I just want to say I
Oh,
can see that in you. And I know that that's not always the norm that couples do that together.
we talk about this all the time,
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head, like on so many things.
just about everything. It's interesting because we'll have people, ask us like, okay, so how do you get there? Or whatever it is in life. And, they'll be like, oh, I have no time. But then come to find out every Sunday they spend 4 hours watching football. And it's like, well, if you have time for that, you probably have time to go do an hour workout. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure your husband training and spending time for that, that probably makes him a much better husband, much better in his work.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you support that,
Mhm.
now he has the backing, knowing that, his spouse is supporting him. And again, yeah, would you rather have him, chill on the couch watching football 3 hours every night?
Mm.
I know football's not huge up in Canada. Just using it as a
But
as an example.
it's funny because Charles was joking around with some people about, I don't know how big of news this was where you are, but when Taylor Swift got engaged, and we're not big Taylor Swift fans. We also are not fans of whoever she got engaged to. And Charles said, "Oh, he's the football player, right?" And someone was like, "Oh, that's not very manly of you to like, you just lost your man card for not knowing that."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Do you really want to start that conversation?"
That's the man card. That's what
That's
qualifies.
what was said, but
Sorry.
uh, and to us, it's just funny because society paints that picture.
Mhm.
Society sets those expectations that this is what it means to be a man, is to, follow football. Whereas, we would argue that, instead, Charles and your husband are prioritizing setting that example for their family, prioritizing their body and their health. And that makes them, in my opinion, a better man. And that is the better role of a man. And for listeners, I was not always into fitness. Charles always was since we started dating. And I always supported him in doing that. And he always would ask, do you want to join me? And I'd say, nope,
Nope.
like you do you, but I support you. I know it's important. I never got upset when he wanted to go to the gym. I knew that was important. And, I knew he prioritized that and I supported that. And then eventually I got bit by the gym bug and, I joined him, but I never stood in his way because I did understand the priority of that. And I think it's just society paints a picture, same thing with drinking. They paint a picture that that's okay to do. That's the acceptable, fun thing. You should be drinking. And I think it's just on us. It's important for us to just push back and say, no, like, actually, I
Mhm.
disagree. And this is how I'm going to live my life instead.
I hope that just continues and lands for somebody to see, like, you don't have to do it the way everyone else is doing it. It's okay to have different values. It is absolutely okay to have different values. I love kettlebells, but tell everyone about the other part. So you also do coaching and support with kettlebells. Is that correct?
So we actually, to be honest, the name kettlebells is
Okay.
really just for the alliteration, Kava and
Okay.
Kettlebells. We appreciate all forms of movement. I am partial to just any sort of strength training, whether
Mhm.
you're using kettlebells or dumbbells or barbells, all of the above, I think have a place. So I'm a personal trainer. I work for an online company called Trainwell. It's a virtual training app that pairs you with a personal trainer. I unfortunately am no longer taking on clients. I'm a manager of trainers right now, but it's still a wonderful company I encourage people to look into. And before that, I had a personal training business that I ran. And then I've also, worked in gyms. And I always joke that Charles was my OG trainer. He's the one who trained me and got me into fitness. And then now I give him the side eye and be like, oh, let's watch your form, big guy.
She's not lying.
She's not lying. Oh, well, I'm glad. I just wanted to clarify on that. So, like, a lot of what you're doing and speaking on is also sharing your story, but talking about the importance of fitness, the importance of alcohol-free living, and how it, through your story, has helped you to heal, recover, and live lives that you're both living now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would say they both go hand in hand because a lot of people who are really into fitness or if starting a fitness journey, right? They recognize that alcohol is a major setback, right? You could be doing everything right, diet, training,
Mhm.
sleep, but if if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, it's going to severely hamper your progress. But at the same time, people are people and people sometimes like to drink something or,
Mhm.
socialize and
Mhm.
have an elixir to help them, again, come down or to relax. And, not everyone wants to, you know, smoke weed or do mushrooms because that, takes you out of your mind to some extent and, could cause issues with jobs. So, our whole goal is to show that, to the fitness community that, hey, there's other options out there besides alcohol, namely, things like kava, kratom too is another thing that we talk about quite a bit. These plants that make you feel good, but don't have the side effects that affect your fitness. If anything, actually, kava is great for muscle recovery and for sleep. And then we also want to show the botanical community who are into kava and stuff like that, that hey, this blends really well with fitness. And if you're not on the fitness lifestyle, here's some things to think about to make you feel better. Because typically most people who do step away from alcohol outside of addiction reasons, a lot of times it's because they're trying to live healthier or change something right with their health or their physique or mindset, whatever it might be. And so the two just blend really well together. And we started the podcast, the intent of just kind of showing both communities how well they blend. But like Heidi mentioned, began to, we use our platform to showcase small businesses in this kava bars, vendors, anyone in the space, because it's a growing space. It's not massive. It's growing extremely fast. Kava bars are exploding in the United States, as well as kava as a consumer product, right, that you can purchase. So we wanted to give some type of platform just because there's not a lot of podcasts out there on Kava.
Podcasts, and also it's really hard to talk about it on social media. So we have been restricted and shadow banned all
Well,
the
I
time.
saw that. I saw that. So what, like, oh my gosh. So not that anybody knows why you're shadow banned, but I saw your message and then you created a backup account as well.
Yeah.
Because
So
of talking about Kava? Is that
well, not really kava. Kratom is the big one. And so
okay?
kratom, it's a little controversial, I suppose. Some states it is illegal. There's, I think, 2 or 3 states where it is illegal.
Mhm.
Most states it is legal, but again, there's just a lot of misinformation about it. And there's a lot of 7-OH is something we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but it is not kratom, but it is lumped in with kratom. And a lot of even news outlets will report on it as if it is kratom. So it's really just a lot of misinformation, which is why, we wanted to start the podcast to just help educate and inform people. So that being said, if you use the word or there's certain companies, then every social media platform will flag you and restrict you.
I
And
can
so it's
think of a
frustrating.
couple words that do that, but I'm not going to say them here.
Oh, I know. And it's crazy too, the things that you can still see
Yeah.
on
Oh,
which
yeah.
seem to be fine. So, and that's part of what we want to push for. And we hope that down the road that this is changed and that there is no longer this stigma and this misinformation about it. And that we just want to help educate people about what the plants truly are and how they can help.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say this because another guest that I had interviewed, we talked about, if you actually were going to take alcohol for an example and get it approved to sell, it would not pass now. It wouldn't be
Right?
something you would sell. Yeah, I mean, that's another whole story. But here in Canada, when we went through the pandemic, like everything was closed except for our liquor stores. And I'm like, what
Right?
is happening? And
I
like,
know.
I
Yeah,
couldn't
it's a little
find
interesting.
yeah, and it was just very much like, well, they were worried about addiction being an issue, and I'm like, "What good? It skyrocketed during the pandemic."
Yeah.
What
It
you're
got way
thinking.
worse.
Not the gyms, though. We can't open those. So it's just very interesting, but I also feel that people are, and maybe that's just my circle and what I'm seeing, people are really looking for different alternate options. Like we're starting to be more creative, more just open to looking than other than straight, different pharmaceuticals, nothing wrong with that. But just to edify this sense that, people are interested in finding ways for their own health of what they can do.
Yes,
I agree.
exactly. And so we're seeing that as well. And we're hoping that that continues over the years. And
Mhm.
we're just excited to be a part of helping lead people to that path if they're interested and help give them the information and resources to do so.
Yeah, and
I
maybe I'll just say, speaking of COVID, I have seen kind of like a resurgence of, I guess, an emphasis on health, from people after COVID. And I think, regardless of, I know COVID stirs up a lot of controversy,
Yep.
but I think it did show that if you're unhealthy, you're very susceptible to these type of things that come around.
Mhm.
And outside of pharmaceutical ways to protect yourself, you can also just be a healthy person. I think after COVID, a lot of people kind of woke up and were like, okay, what can I do to get myself in a good spot? Physical health, mental health, spiritual health, and all the pillars, right? So I think part of that too is a recognition that, hey, alcohol is probably not the best thing, right? And, even just looking at like, the stats in the United States, and I'd be curious, how Canada follows too, but DUIs, deaths from DUIs,
Domestic abuse.
domestic abuse, cancer, all that. And just like you said, like if you objectively look at alcohol, it's poison. Like at the end of the day, yeah, definitely wouldn't be approved right now if that was something that just came out.
Mhm. Yeah, I appreciate the conversation because I think that more and more people are being curious and looking for ways to, maybe it's something else that they want to use or just a way to be healthier and
Yeah.
putting health as a top priority. And I mean, I just really hope then over time that this becomes less weird to take care of your health. Like it's like we're the weirdos, but that's okay. If we are.
It is something where I always give this example, right? Because I'm that person who usually like packs food. We work remote now, so I'm not going to like a workspace, but back in my day, I'd bring, all my meals with me, and people always have to comment, oh, you got, your chicken or turkey or a fish, and vegetables again. But when someone brings in McDonald's, no one bats an eye. No one
No one
thinks
even
twice about it.
comments. No one says
Yeah.
anything.
No,
No.
that's just like normal. And, I think just, looking at America alone, the stats here with obesity and childhood obesity and chronic disease, it's like something's got to give at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm grateful that you're here sharing. I'm grateful that you both walked away from that unbelievable. I'm sure that gives you a different, renewed, like blessing every day. Do you find that sometimes that you almost wish you could say to people like you have a chance every day. Like you have this renewed sense because you did walk away from something that is almost hard to believe.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think it's something that, of course, I would never wish that on
No.
anyone, but it is sometimes I wish I could, kind of slap people across the head and say, value the life that you have now because it could be taken from you in a second. So, value it and make it worthwhile and, do good to yourself and others and make the best of it.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because I think we get caught up in the day to day, and we do as well. There's routines and there's busy days, but I think if it's something that you are intentional about, and a lot of people say like gratitude or count your blessings, I think that's the real thing, right? And especially when you almost had something taken from you, it does give you a new perspective on what's important. I think a lot. You ask someone like if you had like a week left to live, like what would you do? Like who would you talk to? What would you say? And not to sound morbid, but like you don't know when that day's gonna be. So, don't waste life. And if you don't feel fulfilled, find a way to enable that fulfillment for you.
Take that control because you have that control.
I love that message. So, as we joked about social media, where can people connect to learn more about you both and what you do?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can find us on Instagram at Kava_Kettlebells. We're the most responsive there. So you can send us messages and it's us replying, and we're happy to answer any questions. You can also follow our podcast on whatever audio platform you listen through. We've been doing audio for 3 years now. We just also went onto YouTube this year, so you can find our recent stuff in video form on YouTube.
It's just at Kava and Kettlebells.
We are on TikTok a little bit, but we're not very active. But
Yeah.
same thing, Kava_Kettlebells.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure that it's all there in the show notes. I have loved being able to connect and talk to you both and learn a little bit more about your stories. So I thank you so much for being here. I do have one more question, and I think you might have already answered it, but I don't want to preempt. What lesson in life are you most grateful for?
Yeah, I think that's that's a good one. I don't know about lesson necessarily, but I think just the idea, kind of like I said earlier, that life is so precious and, you don't know when your last day is going to be. And so really take advantage and live every day, to the fullest. And I think that goes both just for yourself, for your own body, and then those around you as well. And make sure that you are a loving and caring person to everyone around you so that, if that is your last day, that you left that positive impact on everyone around you as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say for me, probably the biggest lesson is never live your life on someone else's terms. And this is what I tell a lot of people and a lot of people I mentor growing up. It's okay to be you. It's okay to look at other people, especially like leadership styles or what people have accomplished and take things from that, right? And put into your little toolkit, But everyone's different. And I think people need to embrace it and live life on their terms, right? And don't try to conform to something just because it's like the hotness at the time, right? Embrace your individuality, play to your strengths. And again, like just be you and don't try to, people can see when you're not genuine, I think, very much so. So be a genuine person. I think good things will come your way.
I love that. I love that message from both of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you both.
Thank you. We really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. If you love this episode, I invite you to tag me on social media with your takeaways or share it with a friend. Please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I will be forever grateful. Until next time, remember, when you own your choices, you truly own your life.